camel caravans bring to Peiping shipments of raw wool. They've crossed the Mongolian desert, plodding their way from pasture lands of Central Asia to the former capital of China. Revolution moved the center of government to Nanking, and war subsequently transferred it to Chongqing. Along the street, we see a beggar boy. The sign of his profession is, according to custom, a patch of hair at the back of his otherwise shaved head. These glimpses of China show that, in spite of war, turmoil, and the Jap enemy, life continues with traditional pattern in this ancient land. This bridge takes us to the Forbidden City, the imperial section where the emperors of old ruled in pomp and splendor. The Forbidden City is deserted now. Fabulous architecture like the Temple of Heaven, the most magnificent edifice in Peiping. That tiling is called the Nine Dragon Screen. With colors that never fade, it is the finest example of carved ceramic tile in China. At the Summer Palace, on the grass, a scene of imperial pageant, an artisan works, the eternal, patient Chinese craftsman. Ivory workers who turn out exquisite carvings. Ivory is soft enough to be carved with a chisel, and with the patience that is part of the Chinese legend, the craftsman produces small masterpieces in the art of ivory. A boy operates the drill to hollow out a piece of jade. It is the treasured material of ancient Chinese tradition. Jade, the imperial stone. Some of the rarer kinds are virtually priceless, and jade is the material of some of the most exquisite of Chinese art. The making of a cloisonné vase is a task of delicate skill. The ornamental design is outlined with fine copper wires, which are worked into the lacquered finish. Age-old China has survived many a storm of war, has endured the violence and havoc of many an invasion, but always the craftsmanship of China has maintained its tradition. Woolen yarn for making rugs is colored in vats of dye. This is the kind of wool that the camel caravans bring from the sheep-raising country in Central Asia. The dyed yarn is then hung over a bamboo pole to dry in the sun. It is constantly turned over so that the color will be even in drying. The spinning is done with a wheel constructed from an old wooden box. In this rug industry, the equipment is primitive, like that spindle. The ways of work haven't changed much in all the centuries since the time when the Chinese first developed historic skill in the production of textiles. Oriental and old-fashioned, but they turn out masterpieces in rug making. A task for the skilled fingers of women workers. Following the outline of the pattern, they fill it in with yarn of the proper color, using a cleverly devised automatic needle. Young China waits patiently with some curiosity about the needle with which his mother gives patterns of color to the rug. The final operation, trimming the fluff from the surface of the rug. A minimum of mechanism, a maximum of handiwork. And the rug is finished off with the deft application of the scissors. And now, ready for the market. a fine example of the age-old Chinese art of rug making. The costumes of old China are famous for a rich splendor of silk. China, the original land of silk. A modern Chinese girl modeling a ceremonial robe worn on impressive occasions. More modern is the costume of the present-day Chinese mother taking a stroll with her two youngsters. Children in this ancient land have a quaint and curious charm. What Miss China wears when she goes to a nightclub. A funeral in China can be an astonishing spectacle when the deceased has been important and rich. The regalia is rented and the troop of mourners is hired. Things they carry are symbolic. Canopies embroidered with guardians to protect the deceased from demons. His possessions accompany him into the other world symbolically. Valuable articles are duplicated in paper, and the paper replicas are carried along to be burned, which means that he takes them with him to the spirit world. The bier, which is carried by nearly 100 pallbearers. The deceased was a fabulously rich merchant and has a millionaire funeral, China style. Shanghai, where the Yangtze is a living place for tens of thousands of people who pass all their lives on boats. The waterfront presents some of the most picturesque scenes on earth. Beggar boats, aboard which live mendicants of the waterfront. They are propelled by woman power. A curious kind of sculling sends the craft along. War or no war, the river life at Shanghai goes on. Typical of the Yangtze, a Chinese junk with a style of navigation unchanged for centuries.